Om Shri Sai Ram, Prashanti Vahini, by Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba, Chapter 7. Inquire and investigate the real and the unreal. Mankind is unable to instill firm faith in anything. Yes, how can he ever develop faith truly when he sees from his birth all things changing around him, his companionship changing, his education changing, his experience itself undergoing various transformations, and the atmosphere in which he grows constantly being changed? When he grows up in an environment that has no permanency, how can that belief arise? Observing all this, it can be declared without any fear of contradiction that this is an unreal world. For if this is real, how can it change? All that suffers change is unreal. Satya, or ultimate truth, reality alone is changeless. That real and changeless entity is the Atma alone. The Atma is the form of the Lord. It is the all-powerful. Man alone has the capacity, the credentials for the realization of that power, for earning that Shakti or energy. It is indeed tragic that even after achieving such human birth, man do not realize that eternal reality, nor even make an attempt to understand it. If this chance is missed, when can they attempt it, and when can they realize? Why they do not concern themselves with the very purpose for which they have come? Did they come only for living like all other animals or birds or insects, eating, wandering about, sleeping and seeking pleasure? If the answer is no, then for what else? Can we say that man is just another animal like the rest? Man has three special powers: the power to discriminate, Vivekam, the power to renounce, Vairagyam, and the power to analyze, that is Vicharsana. So, man can never be equated to any other animals or birds, as they have not got these special powers. But of what use are these special powers unless they are applied in actual practice? If they are used, then the name man is apt, otherwise the name animal has to be used. The three powers mentioned above should be applied not only in worldly matters by man, but even in the investigation of the Paramartha, ultimate truth, and to conduct himself accordingly. Really speaking, if discrimination, renunciation and critical analysis are carried out while passing through the joys and sorrows of life, the conviction is bound to dawn in a moment that all this is unreal, that all this has no basis in Satya or truth. When such knowledge dawns, man is certain to immediately tread the path of contemplating on God and take up the inquiry about divinity that will lead him to the truth. This is the task which man must be engaged in. Well, if only everyone asks the questions: who are we? Whence did we come? Where have we come to? How long will we be here? The truth can be easily grasped. That inquiry is the sign of discrimination or vivekam. When, by means of this vivekam, the idea that the world is impermanent gets deeply rooted in the mind, all desires cease automatically. That is the stage of renunciation or Vairagyam. Is it worthwhile to be caught up in this unreal world, and for how long? One asks. This is false, misleading, one tells himself. He then turns his efforts to the realm of the Lord, the Satya Loka, which is eternal and truth. That is the right analysis or inquiry. Vichakshana. It is through vivekam or discrimination and vairagyam renunciation that man understands who he really is. Without them, it is impossible to know it. The Lord has blessed only man with these two. He or the Lord has endowed him man so that he might use them for that purpose. Hence, man is truly fortunate. But alas, man has forgotten the task for which he has come, ignored the question whence he came, closed his eyes to where he is, diverted his vivekam and vairagyam towards amusement and creature of comfort, and wasted all his powers. What a tragedy this! If in this most propitious human birth itself the Godhead is not sought after, when else are they to succeed? If you fail to accomplish in this very human birth, will there be anything more conducive than this? If one's real nature is first understood, the rest can also be grasped, easily grasped. One will thereafter know where one is, hence one is going, whence one is going, how long one exists, etc. These four issues are dependent one on the other. If one is solved, all the rest can be known, but not one of these can be ignored. For example, suppose you write a letter to somebody. Whatever be the contents of the letter, if it is merely put into an envelope and posted, whom will it reach? It won't be given to anyone. Well, will it come back at least to the person who wrote it? No. In the end, it will be neither here nor there. Instead, if one on the cover, the address of the person whom it should reach and the address of the person who wrote, if are both written, one can even predict when the letter will reach its destination, is it not? So, too, what do you do with your letter, your life? To whom do you address it? Where do you write it? When can it reach? Whom should it reach? Ignoring all these, not caring even for the time, if you simply worry yourself, how can you ever hope to know the yathartham or the reality? First, you must know your own full address. Who are you? I am the Atma. Whence did you come? From the Atma. Where are you going? To the Atma itself. How long can you be here until you merge with the Atma? Where are you now? In the unreal, the ever-changing. In what form? As Anantam, non-self. What are you engaged in? In evanescent tasks. Therefore, what should you do hereafter? Give up these three and try the other three, to enter the eternal, to engage in never-changing tasks, and to enjoy the bliss of the Atman. This must be the chief effort of the Jivi, its perpetual aim, the greatest adventure in the world. All other tasks are humdrum and silly. They glitter a moment and vanish. You will realize this truth if only you turn your back on them and watch wisely. There is a short story which illustrates these points. There was once a Raja or king who had transferred all responsibility of ruling to his mantri or minister and was spending his time in ease. He never worried about anything, be it big or small. He appointed a personal trustworthy companion whom he had always by his side more or less as a bodyguard. This fellow was very wise, for he never did anything without deep deliberation, about the how and the why and the wherefore. The Raja took all this deliberation to be just foolishness, and he nicknamed the companion Aviveka Shikhamani, or the crest jewel of fools. He went to the length of actually engraving the title on a plate of gold and compelling him to wear it on his forehead for all to see. Many people were misled by this, and they took him to be an ignoramus at court. They did not heed his words. Meanwhile, the Raja fell ill. The kingdom was combed for physicians who could heal the king. Messengers went to the 8 corners seeking drugs and doctors. Hundreds were busy around the royal patient, but all efforts failed. The illness worsened day by day. Then the Raja was at the very door of death. The Raja suspected that his end was near, so he made all necessary dispositions, spoke to all those whom he wanted to meet, and was immersed in sorrow. He had no thought of God or any other auspicious power. He was in terrible fear of death and could not think of anything else. Day by day, he was becoming weak. One day, he called Aviveka Shikhamani, the crest jewel of fools, and said, "Well, I'm going soon, my dear." Then the fool asked without any compunction, "What? You are weak and cannot walk a few steps? I shall order a palanquin. Please wait till it is ready." "No palanquin can take me there," said the Raja. "Then I shall order a chariot," entreated the fool. "The chariot too is of no use," replied the Raja. "Then I shall arrange a horse for you," said the companion, who seemed eager to come to the rescue of his master and to spare him the toils of travel. The Raja was annoyed and said that the horse too could not enter there. The fool was at his wits' end. Then suddenly an idea struck him. He said, "Come on, master, I shall carry you there on my shoulders." The Raja said, "My dear friend, one has to go alone to that place. When one's time has come, no companion can be taken." The fool then asked the Raja, "You say that the palanquin won't reach there, that the chariot can't go there, nor the horse. You say that no second person can join you. Well, can't you tell me at least where that place is?" The Raja replied, "I do not know." Immediately after hearing this, the fool unwound the golden plate from his forehead with the engraving of the title Aviveka Shikhamani and boldly handed it over to the Raja, saying, "Raja, you know so much about the place, even which things cannot go there, but you do not know where it is, and still you are going there soon. So you deserve this title much more. You must carry it." The Raja was overcome with shame. He said to himself, "Alas, I wasted my years in eating and sleeping and pursuing pleasures, never caring to inquire who am I, who I am, whence I came, what I am doing, where I am now, and where I should go. The precious time allotted to me has come near its end. There is no time for me anymore for all that inquiry. Death is knocking at the door. Wife and children have started weeping. My subjects are in great anxiety. Can I under such conditions immerse myself in inquiry? Can a thought that I never entertained throughout my life suddenly arise now, during my last moments? It is impossible. Yes, I deserve the title Aviveka Shikhamani more than anyone else, for I wasted my life in useless pursuits without any thought of the reality." The Raja let it be proclaimed that inquiry is the best means of knowing the truth, that the inquiry must be directed to separating the true from the untrue, the eternal from the temporary, that people should arrive at the firm conclusion with faith that God is the only true and eternal entity, and that by their own independent investigation, His subjects must not only grasp the omnipotence of the Lord, but must also attain the grace of that infinite, inconceivable, and merciful God by their pure lives. Announcing this lesson to his subjects, the Raja breathed his last. Note how the Raja, blinded by material power and pleasures, misdirected his energies towards the world, away from God, without any inquiry, without any thoughts of God, and ended his days in agony. Therefore, every sadhaka must enter on the path of inquiry to investigate the real and the unreal, the permanent and the changing. Then only can the conviction dawn and grow that nature and all learning connected with nature are unreal. Then only will these be given a relative, not an absolute value. They are of course to be learnt and experienced as necessary for existence, as a kind of daily routine and as one's duties. They should not be mistaken to be the highest knowledge, the unchanging eternal truth. That mistake, if committed, leads to ashanti, an agitated mind. Sorrows or sufferings are inevitable so long as ashanti persists. Shanti or peace cannot result until sorrow exists. If you aspire for shanti, the basic thing is have faith in the temporary nature, be engaged in the quest for truth, do not entangle in sorrows and ashanti, and experience shanti in the uninterrupted contemplation of the changeless Godhead. Therefore, do not be bound by selfish attachments. Engage yourself in the discharge of your duties. Do not allow yourselves to be gladdened by success or saddened by failure. Exercise vivekam or discrimination and vairagyam or renunciation in the path of inquiry, and then you can beat the drum of victory. Great declarations like these reveal the Swarupa Jnanam or the knowledge of the true form or the Atma, and the Jnana of the glory of Godhead, that is Jnana and Bhakti as the best sadhanas or spiritual practices. If the two paths, Jnana or knowledge in Bhakti, devotion, are compared and inquired, it can be said that Bhakti is favored by the Lord. In the path of Bhakti, there is the need to grasp the reality and its inner meaning fully and clearly. For this, the objective world is itself the pramana, prameya, and the sadhanam and phalam, fruit or result. To know this, spiritual inquiry has to be pursued. Such an inquiry will grant unshakable shanti. Inquiry alone can reveal the truth behind all the objective world. Such inquiry will gradually grow in strength and ultimately reveal the truth. It is your experience, is it not, that when you do some task carefully for a long time, correcting your mistakes as and when you discover them, avoiding the repetition of the same while continuing with the task, you invariably achieve even more success than you hope to get. What is wanted is just the unflagging desire to achieve victory that will lead you to discover the means thereof, to develop earnestness and care in the pursuit of those means, and to get success. However, if the desire to achieve victory is not intense enough, earnestness and care in the pursuit will become weak even in the means to discover. So, Ichcha is very important here. Ichha means a simple desire or will to attain the highest and the best position. Ichha Shakti means to put in the valiant efforts to fulfill his desire to attain the highest position. Of these two, to experience real Shanti, Ichha Shakti is of utmost importance. Well, take the example of a person desirous to become stronger. His Ichha will turn into Ichha Shakti if he first learns the means of realizing his aim, the exercises, the diet, the disciplines, etc. And when he starts practicing them, this Ichha Shakti is also known as Drid Sankalpam, or firm resolve or determination. But one important thing must be noted here. There are many who say that the absence of any Ichha is the best, but that is not possible. It is good to have Ichha and to know the reality and permanence of that Ichha, and then to put efforts to not have any Ichha. A person who has an Ichha is better than a person who has no Ichha. Even more superior is a person who has Ichha Shakti than a person with mere Ichha, for he can promote not only his own good but even the world's good if there is nobility in his Ichha Shakti. On the other hand, if there is evil in his Ichha Shakti, he will cause harm not only to his own self but also to the world. Therefore, if good things are attempted with Ichha Shakti, it will result in divine Shanti and transform you into an embodiment of Shanti. Instead, if he diverts his Ichha Shakti towards worldly desires, both he himself and the world will be troubled by a Shanti. Jai Sai Ram.
साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ